I'd like to introduce Reverend Winton Hill, U.S. Army Chaplain, for a blessing.
Would you bow your heads, please? We offer thanksgiving tonight for good citizens, for neighbors, for family members who remember our veterans, people as young people who shipped out to foreign destinations, lived in the middle of the ocean on a piece of steel, flew soaringly through the air, and stood their post in wintry weather, who advanced in the desert, all because they loved liberty and loved the United States of America. We thank you for our founding fathers and mothers, their vision for a community of mutual respect, of public discourse without public disagreement. We thank you for the promise of tomorrow. We ask that you would bless all of those who have been elected to lead us in our nation on every level, and that you would bless the United States of America. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend.
Okay.
Thank you. If everyone would please stand, we have two honored veterans with us tonight. Fred Drenkon. These are World War II veterans. Fred is the kid, he's 97, and Dan Santagata, 99, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah. Okay.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the valley, through the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing.
Present. forward, march.
You may be seated. Thank you for the Stamford Police Honor Guard. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Fred and Dan, Reverend Hill. Welcome and thank you all for coming tonight. We enjoy having our family and friends together to celebrate everything Veterans and Veterans Park. What people don't know about our honoree is actually this was his idea before it was anyone else's. What started about 10 years ago when Pat Parry and Pat Sasser came to my office to say we needed to do something about Veterans Park and we needed to do something in honor of Pat's son and Michael's son, Brian Bill. And that has been our motivation for the last decade. But about a year or so before that, Greg had an idea, a vision for that park. He had been looking at that park for how many decades, Greg? Too many? 40? 4 decades? The math. So, and he commissioned a survey of the park. Said we've got to know the facts, we've got to start with the basics, and then we have to reimagine what we're doing here, and then we have to get everyone around us to participate. And that's what's been happening, and Greg's been a critical part every step of the way. Every time we need anything, Greg steps up, and so it's a pleasure for me on a personal level and as president to thank you, Greg, for everything that you've done for all of us. I'd like to turn over the program to Colleen Harkey, who is our executive director. For those of you who don't know Colleen, she's pretty amazing and covers every detail. She's been involved with the construction all the way along, the consummate professional, and I will let her take over. Thank you.
Thank you. We apologize. We have a few little snafus tonight. One of them is the microphone, which we're going to cut loose with this tape once Tom takes the reins up here. So just to share, it's an honor and a privilege to be with you this evening to honor Greg and all of the veterans. And I'd like to begin with welcoming all of our veterans. We have a record number with us here tonight, and we're so pleased to have so many of you this year. So thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. I do have a special message. We're very disappointed that Charlie Genta cannot be here with us tonight. But I got a call last week from the Waveney Care Center that he wanted to express to everyone how disappointed he couldn't be here tonight and sent a special message to Greg. Congratulations. Charlie is taking a little respite in preparation for his 100th birthday party, and he promises to be with us next year, so it's wonderful. It takes many hands with diverse talents to make an evening like this happen, and Stamford Veterans Park Partnership and the Board of Directors are very, very fortunate to have the support of some seasoned event committee members. We have Tom Casone as our chair. Thank you, Tom. And Dave Dietrich, who unfortunately is a little under the weather. He and his wife, Lee, had to cancel at the last minute. Tom Lindvall. Bruce Moore Jr. Bruce has been a stellar supporter of ours, both on the committee and with our grounds. Rick Redness, of course, Jamie Sherwood, right alongside of us all these years, and as well as Dan Stolzenbach. So thank you all for helping us this year make it a wonderful event. I'd like to extend our appreciation to our sponsors. We have several long-term sponsors, Rexon, of course, and the Capelli Group. Thank you so much. Stamford Health is here in the house. We're very, very generous supporters of ours. Thank you. M&T Bank, Stamford Downtown, not only supporters, but our friends and partners in looking after the park. Cam Sam Electric, Eastern Land Management, First County Bank, we're so happy to have you here. Stamford Town Center, the Rich Foundation, and our in-kind sponsor, Springdale Florist again. Please, we'd love to tell you to take home the centerpieces, but those will be collected and planted in the park tomorrow morning by our really amazing partner in Kevin Murray and the City of Stamford Operations. I'm meeting the guys at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to plant them in our planters. So thank you very much for that. So this evening, we will be taken on a journey through the rich history of Stamford and the service and sacrifice of our veterans and our families. This presentation serves as an introduction to the historic retrospective and military history project that Stamford Veterans Park Partnership is working on with the generous support of a $150,000 grant from the Stamford's Urban Renewal Commission, the URC. Is Rich in the room? There he is. Rich. Thank you so much. Rich is the chair of the commission, and Stamford Veterans Park Partnership is grateful for the URC support, and we're happy to have you with us here this evening, so thank you. If you haven't had an opportunity to get a sneak peek at what those storyboards will look like, what's here it pales in comparison with what will be installed in the park on Veterans Day this year. There is a little notice in the center of your program, so please mark that day on your calendar. So I will say right now, I hope you enjoy your salad, eat up and be well. Once we have our dinner served, our program will begin. So thank you. If I could have your attention for a moment, I'd like to make an introduction. I'd like to introduce Bob Doran. Bob is the founder and president of Innova Media Group. Bob has graciously accepted our invitation to do our presentation tonight, and we're very fortunate to have him. Bob's extraordinarily experienced at this, very talented, and a heck of a really nice guy. Bob Doran.
Thank you, Colleen. I didn't recognize who you were talking about there for a second. Good evening, everyone. The chaplain talked at the beginning about the promise of tomorrow, and I think those are very good words for us to remember as we talk this evening about the Stamford Veterans Memorial Park. The Stamford Veterans Memorial Park is an integral part of the history of this great city. It stands as a reminder of this city's significant contribution to our nation's wars for freedom and of the great price of living in a free society. The park is a symbol of this city's rich past and the legacy of courage and sacrifice that has been a hallmark of Stamford's history for more than 300 years. The location of the park itself is extremely significant, and it's not an overstatement to characterize the park as sitting on hallowed ground. For our city, this site has held enormous significance to generations of our citizens. It was exactly on the land where the park now lies that in 1641 the settlement of Stamford was founded by 29 courageous families who had left the comfort of their own settlements to find a new and better life. The site later became the home of the town's first meeting house, as well as the first congregational church, the town's armory, and Stamford's very first public schoolhouse. For hundreds of years thereafter, it became the center of downtown Stamford, a hub, if you will, and a gathering place, which became known in later years as Central Park and Atlantic Square. During the 20th century, as the United States entered World War II, the site took on added significance, as it was chosen to be the home of the town's service roll, which would display the names of our local citizens who served the country during that war. The service roll would also identify with a gold star those who sacrificed their lives during the war. On Memorial Day 1943, with over 10,000 citizens in attendance, this iconic white three-sided structure was dedicated. On that day, over 5,000 500 names would be displayed on the walls. By the war's end, over 10,000 names would blanket each side. Close to 200 of those names would bear the gold star. At the top of the structure, above the names, was written, "These be our valiant sons and daughters who have gone in jeopardy of their lives. Let none be found wanting." In the 1970s, the Urban Renewal Commission resculptured the downtown landscape of Stamford, and the service roll was demolished. It was, however, replaced by the new Veterans Memorial Park, within which stood distinctive granite monoliths that paid tribute to the four freedoms articulated by FDR: freedom of speech and expression, freedom to worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear. On September 5th, 2018, funded by a public-private partnership between Stamford Veterans Park Partnership and the City of Stamford, and under the design of Beta Group, ground was broken on a new Veterans Memorial Park to refurbish, modernize, and revitalize the park in honor of our veterans. This new iteration of the park celebrates and broadens the emphasis of Stamford's rich history. One significant aspect of the renovation was updating the inscriptions on the memorial wall to include the names of local citizens who sacrificed their lives from the French and Indian War to the global war on terrorism. This newly renovated and vibrant park continues to grow and expand on ways to tell the stories of the service and sacrifice of so many. Stamford Veterans Memorial Park, with Abraham Lincoln's prominent placement at its entrance, reminds visitors of the significant contributions of the city and its citizens for our nation's freedom, because with Stamford, there's quite a story to tell. From the earliest times in our country's history, the citizens of Stamford fought and died to defend our nation's liberty. They fought at Yorktown, Saratoga, and fought and died during the War of 1812, despite Connecticut's refusal to join the war effort. They performed courageously at Gettysburg, the Argonne Forest, Pearl Harbor, Normandy, at Incheon, Quezon, and during the global war on terrorism. The citizens of Stamford have distinguished themselves in every branch of service in every corner of the globe, and they are the recipients of every major military award for bravery. And, as has so often been stated, they have represented every race, creed, ethnicity, and socioeconomic background. I'd like to take a moment, if I may, to highlight just a few of Stamford's contributions. During the American Revolution, Uzal Knapp served on George Washington's elite lifeguard, which protected the general. He was the oldest surviving member and died at age 97. Uzal was buried with full honors at Washington's headquarters in Newburgh, New York. Sergeant William Brown was among the very first to receive the Badge of Military Merit by George Washington, the award that we know now as the Purple Heart. Hart Schofield, a local cobbler, crossed the Delaware with George Washington on December 25th, 1776. Samuel Bush, an African-American soldier, served directly under George Washington and accompanied him throughout the war. Washington personally wrote up and signed Bush's discharge papers. The 192nd Field Artillery Battalion was formed in Stamford in 1642 and is considered to be one of the oldest military units and the oldest artillery unit in U.S. history. Initially formed to provide protection from Indian and Dutch attacks, the unit served with distinction in every military conflict from the American Revolution to World War II. And although the 192nd was briefly disbanded in 1993, it was reactivated and continues to serve the citizens of Connecticut. Stamford has 4 Medal of Honor recipients. David Schofield received the Medal of Honor for his extraordinary heroism at the Battle of Cedar Creek during the Civil War. George Rose, in receiving the Medal of Honor, was cited for gallantry during the Boxer Rebellion. John Latham received the Medal of Honor for heroic actions, risking his life to rescue fellow soldiers during World War I. Homer Wise, whose statue and plaque stand prominently in Veterans Memorial Park, received the Medal of Honor for multiple acts of bravery against German forces in Italy during World War II. And Stamford families have borne an inordinate burden during our country's wars. The Slauson family lost 2 of its sons in the French and Indian War. The Hobby, Waterbury, and Peat families lost 2 sons each during the Civil War. The Lockwood family lost 3 sons in the Civil War. The Kitchak, Austin, and Loveland families each lost 2 sons in World War II. And multiple local families sent 5 and 6 of their sons to fight in World War II. The DePretta family sent an unprecedented 7 sons overseas to fight in World War II. 6 returned. James DePretta was killed at Tarawa. The Hunter family sent 5 boys overseas to fight in Vietnam. All 5 returned safely. And let me take a moment to acknowledge Lenny and Harry Hunter, who are here with us tonight. Thank you, Lenny and Harry. The Parry family lost their son, Navy SEAL Brian Bill, on August 8, 2011, in the global war on terrorism. I'd like to acknowledge Patricia Parry, Gold Star mother and founding member of Stamford Veterans Park Partnership, who's also here with us tonight. Thank you, Patricia. During World War II, at least 5 Stamford men earned the Navy Cross, the 2nd highest military decoration awarded to sailors and Marines. The last of these was awarded 50 years after it was earned. James Dockery was one of the last surviving members of Gun Tub 10 on the USS Intrepid, which was made up entirely of Black and Hispanic volunteers. On October 29, 1944, these men were credited with saving the ship from a kamikaze attack during the Battle for the Philippines. Finally, in 1944, in a ceremony aboard the Intrepid, James Dockery was finally awarded the Navy Cross for his actions almost 50 years earlier. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our World War II veterans that are here with us tonight. Dan Santagata, United States Army, Normandy, in the Battle of the Bulge. Dan is here with us tonight. Fred Drenkon, United States Army, Germany. Fred is with us tonight as well. And as Colleen mentioned earlier, Charlie Genta, United States Army, Battle of Iwo Jima in the South Pacific, who cannot be with us tonight, but sends his regards to all and still deserves our applause. In addition to the contributions on the battlefield, the citizens of Stamford helped fuel the much-needed war of efforts here at home by becoming a center of wartime industries, manufacturing numerous munitions and equipment to support the war effort. Civilians, as well as combatants, served their country with distinction and heroism. Mary Nerney, a trained American Red Cross nurse working with Stamford Hospital, was poised and ready to depart overseas to serve when she volunteered to care for World War I soldiers who were being brought to the hospital for care, having contracted the dreaded Spanish influenza. Mary lost her life in service to these men, who then insisted on burying her with full military honors and presenting her with a gold medal, which at that time was awarded only to soldiers who were killed in battle. Marion Plotnick, who through World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam assembled buddy bags and personally delivered them at the Stamford Railroad Station to local sailors, soldiers, and Marines as they left for war. For many of these youngsters, often no older than 16, this kindly woman, Marion Plotnick, was the last memory they had of their hometown. Rita Romano, who in response to the mass evacuation of children and families during the fall of Vietnam in 1975, answered a higher call. Notified that a plane just landed in John F. Kennedy Airport with orphaned Vietnam children, Rita emptied the furniture in her home and replaced it with 41 cribs to care for the children. Rita tended to their every need until suitable homes could be found for each of them. It should be noted that at the time, Rita had 7 young children of her own. These are but a fraction of the countless stories of courage and sacrifice that are an integral part of Stamford's history. Stories we intend to make an important part of Veterans Memorial Park as the historic retrospective and Veterans History Project is rolled out. And I'd ask that during the evening that you please take time to view the storyboards around the room before you leave to see what is going on. Veterans Memorial Park is a growing, ever-evolving tribute to Stamford's legacy, and a place which, with your help, will serve as a fitting tribute to the great citizens of Stamford who served their country with honor, distinction, and courage. More than 200 years ago, George Washington cautioned his young nation that the willingness of young people to fight and die for their country was directly proportional to how the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their nation. Stamford Veterans Park Partnership strongly believes that the renovation and continued care and programming of Veterans Memorial Park, along with education programs like the retrospective, will help emphasize Washington's call, inspiring generations of our citizens by sharing the stories of Stamford's rich and noble past, and reminding everyone of the tremendous cost of freedom and the sacrifices made by Stamford's own to secure our freedom for future generations. And with that in mind, I would like to ask all of our veterans in the room tonight to please stand so we can recognize you if you can, please. The Stamford Veterans Park Partnership thanks you for joining us on this journey to honor and remember the service and sacrifice of our veterans and their families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob, very much. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So with that, I'd like to bring up Rick Redness to introduce the next phase of our evening.
I don't have to sing. It is my pleasure to introduce someone I think most of us know, certainly Greg knows very well, to help us with this next phase of our evening. And that is Tom Cassone. And Tom is, you can come up, Tom. You can begin to walk up. That's enough? That's it?
So we just have to make one.
No, it's all right.
You're
It's
good?
okay. Yeah, I'm
Good?
good.
All right.
Hello, can you hear me?
All right, good.
Announce about the raffle.
All right, announce about the raffle. The raffle's still going on. It's going to close at some point. The physical phase of the Stamford Veterans Park Partnership, Veterans Memorial Park is, it's largely complete. It's not completely complete, that's for sure, but it will get done. But I think the important next phase of the project is to make sure the stories continue to be told. I read a story, I don't know, a few years back in Wired magazine, one of these online things about this research and treatment for PTSD that could be applicable to soldiers and Marines and serving abroad and involved in combat. And it found that every time you have a memory, your brain actually reconstructs the memory through axons and neurons, and my son's over there, he probably knows better than I do, but, and that you could obstruct that by inserting an enzyme into the blood at the moment that you evoke the memory. And so the treatment was that you would evoke the traumatic memory, you'd inject the enzyme in the carotid artery, it would go into the brain and it would block that memory forever. And I was thinking that's fantastic for many people who suffer from PTSD, but is that the right thing for our society? Veterans Memorial Park is there to honor our veterans and those who served and lost their lives in war. But you also have to remember. You have to remember the trauma, the loss of life. You have to remember what the families went through. And if we didn't have, the Charlie Gintas and the Santagatas if we didn't have those people around to remind us about what those stories were, and if those memories were erased, we'd be doomed to repeat those mistakes and repeat those wars. So I don't know if that's a completely good thing. Dwight David Eisenhower was a great pacifist after he led the Americans in the European theater of operations. So in any event, the story still has to be told. It has to be remembered for at least those two reasons, to honor and also to remember so that we don't repeat and so that more families don't suffer. So Rick and Colleen have already told you about Greg's contributions to the park, his vision from the start, and how he's helped the city of Stamford, the downtown, and by extension the veterans. He's also got a great bio in your program, and so that's all impressive, inspiring, but that's not why I'm up here. I have a different relationship with Greg than all that cool stuff. Greg and I actually both were born in Stamford. Greg and I were both born in Stamford. How's that? Greg and I were both born in Stamford. We both are the same age. We both have Italian last names. He played football for Ripwam High School. I played football for West Hill High School. Go Vikings. Ripwam doesn't exist anymore, by the way. We're building a $300 million facility for the West Hill Vikings. Not your fault. But Greg, and by the way, we won the game decisively, 14-12. So Greg remembers me better than I remember him. But then we got very close in the 80s, I think, right before he met Trish, way before Kelly and Scott, obviously. And Greg and even before Greg got into public service with the Ferguson Library and Palace Theater and the DSSD and the Stamford Veterans Park Partnership, before all that, although he was the accountant for Sterling Farms Golf Authority, and he was the reason that they shut down the paddle courts and tore them out because they were too expensive. And you can imagine today the crush of pickleball players that would be only be too happy. But that's not your fault either, Greg. Anyway, I digress. So Greg and I have been close for a long time, but we're different. Maybe part of that's because of my training as a lawyer. I mean, as a lawyer, you tend to see the downside of things, the reasons not to do things. You always say things like, "Hey, that's a great idea," and then you always say, "But the problem is," that's not Greg Caggainello. If Greg harbors doubts or regrets, he hides them, and he hides them very well. Greg is all about the upside. Greg, he's about hope. He says, let's do it, let's try it. Come on, guys, it's worth a try. People will love it, he'll say. You just wait and see. Believe me, people are going to love it. That's Greg Caggainello. I mean, he's a Mets fan, he's a UConn football fan, and despite that, you're not a Giants fan. And despite that, he's the most optimistic person I've ever known. He's as optimistic as any person can be. I mean, look at the face. It's an RHF. It's not a RBF. It's a resting happy face. Greg's eyes, his whole face, everything smiles about that guy. Greg Caggainello makes you sign on. He makes you believe. He makes you join in. He makes you believe that whatever endeavor you're engaged in, it's going to succeed. It's going to be just great. That's Greg Caggainello. I love that guy. So, it's my pleasure, and now you got to talk. I'm very honored to introduce our honoree, my dear friend, hopefully still my dear friend, he's still my dear friend, Greg Caggainello.
Thank you very much. So just want to qualify one thing that Tom said. Our football game was a 14-12 loss, and Tom actually had an interception in that game. If it was one, and if you read the article, which you can do that now at the Stamford Advocate, you just digitize it, look it up, the ball bounced off a lineman and fell into Tom's hands. So, is that light? No? Okay. So first, I want to thank Mayor Simmons. Thank you very much for coming this evening. All the support the city gives us, we really appreciate it. The veterans, I saw a ton of you stand up tonight. This is probably the largest veteran crowd we've had come here at our event, and we really want it. That's fantastic, and we really want to get the word out and have you guys come every year and bring your buddies, because this park has done all this work. Is for you and the city of Stamford, but really it's for you. Also, the Honor Guard who were here, I'm not sure they are, thank you very much for coming. I have to pick out my Rexon team here. I have 2 tables worth of my coworkers. Hold it. I can't hold it. I can lean. How's that? It's fine.
We're going to cut it off, and you can hold it in your hand, and you don't have to.
This is not normal. This is. I could do this.
No, but you want to hold
You're
it.
gonna see this knife he carries around. There we go. How's that? Better? Okay, good. All right, I was getting a knife. So I want to continue. So my guys from Rexon, thank you very much. I want to especially John Barnes. So I know that our company.
On the video as well. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's all.
By the way, I don't speak a lot, and this is like nuts, so you guys know what I mean? So I'd like to acknowledge John Barnes, because all of our donations and our contributions and the support that we give to all the organizations in downtown Stamford, in the city of Stamford, and especially to Vets Park, this is our largest donation. John had to approve it and support it and go to our executive board with the 2 of us and actually ask for the money. So, John, please stand. Thank you. And I also have my family here tonight. I have my wife, Trish, and I have my daughter Kelly, whose husband Brendan is home taking care of my grandson. Thank you, Kelly. And I have Scott here and his girlfriend Caitlin. And yes, it's the same girl that was here last year with Scott, Caitlin, so that's good. And I have my brother Gary here, and unfortunately my sister-in-law Janet came down with a bad cold. They just traveled to Europe for 3 weeks, the first time ever in Europe, and they just got back. So the only other time that I've actually spoken at the Italian Center up here was about 50, how many, what is it? 48 years ago, I was up here delivering the best man speech to my brother and his wife Janet, right there. The thanks go to Tom Casone. Thank you very much for raising a ton of money tonight. You were unbelievable up here. You forced everybody to, that was great. And I don't want to forget Colleen Harkey, just a fantastic job. It's a lot of work, and we all appreciate it all year long, so thank you very much. So now I can get into my prepared speeches, holding this is going to be good. So, Veterans Park, what a turnaround. The partnership took a neglected space in the heart of our city, transforming it into a space for all to reflect on and enjoy. Stamford Veterans Park Partnership and its organization that works to honor, respect, and support our veterans, active military, and their families. I think in the case of Veterans Park, mission accomplished. Vets Park Partnership is a public-private partnership. I represent the private sector. Landmark Square and Veterans Park shared the center of Stamford for many years. The ownership of Landmark Square always viewed Veterans Park as a tremendous asset. In recent years, the park hasn't been getting the respect it deserved, so it made total sense for Rexon to be a part of the park revitalization effort. I was lucky enough to be supported by owners that understand making a real estate investment includes supporting the community you're invested in as well. They get it. Rexon's commitment to Veterans Park is $1.5 million and counting. With a tremendous amount of effort from the public and private sectors, we were able to create a beautiful space for our veterans to be honored and remembered. You didn't know it was that much, did you, John? I know. I'm the accountant. He just signs. But anyway, so joining Vets Park, Larry's dying right now, right, Larry? Yeah, no. Joining Vets Park Partnership Committee was an easy decision for me. Besides the aggressive recruitment by Sandy and Rick, I wanted to be a part of something big that I could say I played a part in. I wanted my name carved in stone. After 5 years of meetings, I got that. But more importantly, over that same time, I realized why I took a personal interest in the park's revitalization. It's my history at Stamford. I have roots here. My grandparents settled here. I was born and raised here. I spent my entire lifetime in this community. As I walked about the monuments in the park, reading the names, I came to respect the veterans who made it possible for the thousands of Stamford citizens who took up arms in the many wars to fight for their roots, for their family, their town, their country. I never served, but searching through the Ferguson Library's Stamford Advocate Digital Archive, that's you, Alice, I came across a nice article about my dad, Jimmy, and his two brothers, Danny and Larry, being recognized for serving our country during World War II. I'm glad I came across it. I'll pass the article down to my grandson so that he can remember. I'll walk my grandson around the park and its monuments, reading names of those who sacrificed so much. I want him to learn to respect the sacrifices others made to give us the freedom we enjoy today. He will see his great-grandfather's bricks and remember their service for their country. In closing, thank you for honoring me, but it's the veterans that are the ones to be honored and remembered. The description of criteria used in nominating a Patriot Award recipient is to recognize outstanding individuals who make meaningful contributions to support acknowledge and encourage awareness of the selfless sacrifices made by the veterans, active military, and family members in their service to the country. Honestly, my contribution was small in comparison to the sacrifice veterans made fighting and dying to preserve and protect their roots. Thank you.